Welcome to the Learn True Health podcast. I'm your host, Ashley James. This is episode 349. Hello, True Health Seeker, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Learn True Health podcast. This is part 2 of my interview with James Templeton. Episode 348 was part 1, and this is episode 349, so please, if you haven't listened to the first part, you definitely will want to go back and listen to episode 348. We ended that episode right on a high note, right at the climax of his story, and he has so much more information to share, so here's part 2. I know you're going to enjoy it. One of the things he does talk about is the importance of taking vitamin C, and a lot of vitamin C. He's gone through and tried a bunch of different kinds, and we discussed some of them. And after I did this interview with him, which actually was a few months ago, because he wanted me to wait to publish it until his book came out, which his book is just being released right now, which is really exciting. And a link for his book is going to be in the show notes of today's podcast at learntruehealth.com. So you'll be able to go and check that out and definitely support him and his cause by buying his book if you're called to do so. So I tried a few different kinds of vitamin C, and I've discovered that my favorite one, I tried the Dr. Matthias Rath one, I've tried a few others, and my favorite one ultimately that rose above the rest was the one that Kristen Bowen sells on her website. It's acerola cherry powder, and it's fair trade, very clean. What I like about acerola cherry powder is it tastes good, it has the cofactors, and it's from a whole food source. So you're getting a whole food source instead of something that's been synthetically made in a lab. But it does taste good, and I notice my body just seems to buzz with it instead of react negatively towards it. So I recommend trying that as you're listening to the rest of this interview and hearing about the importance of vitamin C. If you think you want to try one, give Kristen Bowen's vitamin C a try. It's the acerola cherry powder. I'm going to have a link to it in the show notes, but you can go to livingthegoodlifenaturally.com. That's her website, livingthegoodlifenaturally.com, and in the shop section under the supplements, you'll be able to find the acerola cherry powder. Now, she does give all the listeners a discount. The coupon code is LTH, as in Learn True Health. And while you're on her website, if you haven't already, try her magnesium soak. It is life-changing. Definitely go back and listen to a few of my episodes that I've done with her. It's been phenomenal. We've had hundreds of listeners go through and try her magnesium soak and share with me the effects that it's had on them. So those two things are phenomenal. Use the coupon code LTH on her website, livingthegoodlifenaturally.com. And all these links are going to be in the show notes of today's podcast at learntruehealth.com. Thank you so much for being a listener. I'm so thrilled that we're on this journey together. My goal when I set out to do this podcast was to publish at least 1,000 interviews. So we are more than a third of the way there. How exciting is that? And we're just going to keep uncovering more and more amazing information like what James Templeton shares today. So enjoy the rest of the interview, and please come join us in the Facebook group. Search Learn True Health in Facebook, or go to learntruehealth.com/group, and that'll redirect you to the Facebook group. Come join the conversation. Have yourself a fantastic rest of your day. Thank you for sharing the podcast with those you love, and enjoy the rest of the interview.
I remember sneaking down the side of the hall on one side of the wall where nobody could see me. And I snuck down some stairs. And I mean, I literally was crawling. I was so weak from this. You know, I threw up like I can't tell you how many times. And it was awful. And I snuck down those stairs and I went out into my car, which had been sitting out there in the parking lot. And I got in that car and I drove out of that place. I never looked back. And I'd made up my mind at that point. I was not going to do any more of that medical stuff like that anymore. I wasn't going to do it. I was going to go all out. I was going to do the macrobiotic diet, lifestyle, vitamin C, and I was going to keep an open mind going forward. So I left there, went to my mother's house, stepmother's house, and stayed there for a week recovering because I stopped twice on the road throwing up. I was so sick on the interstate highway. I remember that. I was just weak, and I was down to probably 120 or 30 pounds, and just had no energy. And I just never looked back. And then uh, I ended up going back to Dallas and dug in. I mean, I really dug in this time even more because I was, weak and sick from the treatments, but I knew what to do now, and it didn't take me very long to start really getting a lot of energy. And when I got back to Dallas, I decided after a while. I said, this is a tough life. I'm working all day long, cooking for myself. I'm eating leftovers for lunch, which I didn't mind doing. It was very lonely because I was by myself. The only people I'd talk to were my employees that worked for me, and they were very, very supportive. But it was, it was a tough go, and I knew I needed to have support, and I needed to do something else. So that's when I decided to go to the Macrobiotic Center, which was the Cushy Institute up in Massachusetts,
Mm-hmm.
and Western Massachusetts at the time, and take a residential seminar. And I spent a week up there, and I took off from the from Dallas and took off a week of work to go up there because I knew there was more things I needed to learn. Plus, I needed a really good break, and I was doing really well then. I wasn't, I this has been a while after all this hospital stuff. I was getting a lot stronger, and I even did. I couldn't, still couldn't walk as well as I'd like to, and I couldn't run very well, but I was getting stronger and stronger. So I decided that if I couldn't walk very well still, I was going to get me a bicycle. So I went down to a bicycle shop and I got me a 10-speed bicycle. And I would go out in the afternoons and I would fit it in every day and I'd ride as much as I could. I worked up to 100 miles a week riding my bicycle because I was determined to do whatever it took because I had been a runner, and I didn't want to lose my ability to my endurance, and which I had, but I wanted to stay strong. So I started doing that, and then uh, you know when I did go up to the Massachusetts, I was in pretty good. Uh, I had a lot of strength. I was in pretty good health. I was doing pretty well. But when I got up there that week, that was probably the best week of my life. And I went there and they had, this was the place to go if you want to learn about macrobiotics. And macrobiotics was, uh, you know, it was really an interesting lifestyle. And, it's just a lonely one when you're by yourself and you don't have the support. And when going up there was all these people there for this residential seminar that had a lot of different problems, from cancer to Epstein-Barr virus to maybe their mother or father had cancer or had passed away and they were interested in it, for their own sake. So I met a lot of very interesting people, and while I was there, uh, the uh, the general manager of the place, I had a conversation with him, and he said that if I wanted to come up there sometime and work study and live there and work and do work study, that was a possibility. And I had been thinking about, what was next, what could I do next. So he offered me a position to come up there and to do work study, which would basically mean I'd have room and board, and I'd wash dishes, cut firewood, whatever I was able to do. At that point, I looked pretty strong. And he also told me there was a famous writer, macrobiotic writer and teacher that lived in Dallas that I should get to know. And his name was Alex Jack. And Alex Jack was one of the top writers, and he wrote a lot of books along with Michio Kushi. which was the macrobiotic guru at that time. And anyway, when I got back to Dallas, I met Alex Jack and his wife, and we became really close friends, and we shared meals at night together. And it was wonderful to have, to have that relationship with them and that support with them. And it wasn't long before Alex decided to go up and live at the Cushing Institute, and he was going to take over the general managership. And he suggested I might want to come up there with them, and I'd been thinking about it, going up there after this general manager that was there offered it to me. So we went up there. He went up there. Then I followed a little bit after them and went up there. And I just walked away from the business I was involved in. And I hated to do that, but the people were very nice. They were very supportive, my friends. And I owe them a lot for giving me that opportunity at that time. And it was a wonderful experience. But I got to go to the Cushing Institute and work there, and eventually I became the operations manager, and that basically meant that I would be in charge of getting the supplies to the facility, picking people up from the airport and the bus stations, making sure there was fuel for the heaters, just whatever needed to be done to keep the operations of the place going. So I enjoyed that a lot. So I was there for several years, and I met a lot of just unbelievable people. And I was, lucky to be living at a place that was so renowned for the macrobiotic studies. And here I am in the thick of things. And the only thing I hated about it was when I moving there was a long ways from Texas and not getting to see my daughter. But I would take, a trip to Texas when I could to see her. But I just felt it was something I needed to do for myself. And I did that, and it was wonderful. But while I was there, I met a fellow, and his name was Herb Shapiro. And Herb Shapiro was a businessman from New Jersey that had a chain of health food stores. And he was up there, dealing with some of his own health issues, living there for a while. And I met him, and, he was a great friend to me also. And to make it kind of a long story short, we became good friends, and he offered me a position to move to New Jersey and cook for him, and also help him within his health food store, so I could learn the business. And I knew that it was time for me to do something else because, I was doing better. My health was thriving. I'd learned a lot about macrobiotics. I'd learned a lot about and met a lot of nice people. And so Herb was seeing a nutritionist. And this nutritionist that he was seeing was up what's in they call the Berkshires up in Western Massachusetts, which was actually where the Cushing Institute was, in that area. But anyway, she was living up there, and her name was Ann Louise Gittleman. And I think you're familiar with Ann Louise.
When you said the nutritionist, I'm like, oh, this is how you guys met. That's so cool. Yeah, I've had Ann Louise on the show. I'm a big fan, absolutely adore her. And that's so exciting. I know the Berkshires. I've spent a few months at Kripalu, which is a yoga residential center there. But I'd love to visit the other centers in the area. It's I like how it's very it's my kind of party. A holistic party.
It's great. I spent a lot of time going over there because they had these beautiful grounds around there, and I would hike in the mountains, the hills. Mm-hmm. I guess they're hills, but I would hike around there and hang out. They had a little bookstore. You remember that? I would hang out in that bookstore.
Yep.
And I met some nice people over there, and some of the people that actually lived at the Cushing Institute, they had lived there also, and they were kind of free spirits, and they were interesting people, and and they had a lot of they had a lot of experience, with a lot of different places like that, and I found them very interesting. And actually, I would go there, I think maybe on a, well, I can't remember what night it was, Tuesday or Wednesday night. They would have these things where the public could go in,
Mm-hmm.
and the yogi there was Yogi Desai, and he would give these seminars, for the public once a week, and I would go over there sometimes. So it was a very interesting place, and I used to look forward to going there sometimes. And but anyway, I my friend was seeing Ann Louise Gittleman as a nutritionist, and um, he had offered that there was, well, he told me about a seminar that she was giving in the Berkshires, and it was on intestinal parasites. It was a weekend long seminar that Anne Louise was teaching on intestinal parasites. And he told me he thought it was very interesting, that I would really find a lot of, would enjoy it very much. And so I took him up on it, and I went with him to one of the seminars, and we drove up from New Jersey to the Berkshires, and went to see Anne Louise speak. And Anne Louise was there, and I'd never met her before and never knew anything about her other than what he had said. And she was remarkable. She was a great teacher, and she was teaching. She had a huge crowd of people, and we were there, and she was teaching about, the issues with parasites, intestinal parasites that people were harboring, and it was causing a lot of different health issues. And I found it very interesting. And she even mentioned that a lot of people that had cancer, she felt had parasites. And so after the seminar, her, my friend, and me went up to see her, and he wanted to introduce me to her. And she says, you know, I'm glad you got to come to see me and all this. And I said, Anne Louise, it's like, you're remarkable, and I want to ask you a question, if I may. She said, sure, ask me. And I said, do you think I might have parasites? I'm a cancer survivor, and I'm wondering if I have parasites. So she kind of looks at me, and she just looked at me for a second. And she says, yes, I think you have parasites. And I said, really? I said, how can you tell? And she says to me, she says, well, you just got that parasitic look. And I went, oh my God, here's this nice looking woman here, and she seemed to be very, very smart. And now she thinks I'm parasitic looking. I'm like, oh my gosh. I think I felt like things were crawling at me instantly or something. But she could see that I was kind of like, interested and wondering a lot about, what she had said and thinking about it. And she says, if you want to, she said, there's a doctor in New York City, and his name is Dr. Herman Bueno. And Dr. Herman Bueno is a world renowned parasitologist. And he's, right downtown in Manhattan in New York City. And she said, you should go see him and have him check you out, because if anybody would know, it'll be him. And I said, well, maybe I should go. And, so she says, well, I'll tell you what, I'll even go with you. If you want to go, I would drive along with you or ride along with you. She says, I haven't met the man. I'd like to meet him. And she says, I'd be happy to do that. So, I said, well, I'll take you up on it. So within a week or two, I got an appointment, and she went with me. And we drove to New York, and I went in, and Dr. Bueno was there. He was a very nice man. He was from Colombia, and he had this Colombia accent, and he was just very like, hello, my friend. He was just this really nice man. And he was an older man. And I told him what I'd been through. And he said he took a tissue swab sample, to where they basically, they go up in your rectum, and they take a swab, a sample, and and put it under the microscope. And he had one of these teaching microscopes that had a two-sided, lenses, where you could see it, and I could see it, and he could see it at the same time. So we sat there and we looked at this, and I didn't know what I was seeing. He says, oh my Lord, he says, you have amoeba. Amoeba histolytica. And I said, oh, and he said, that's a one-celled organism. It's a parasite. And he says, oh, you have Giardia. And he said, Giardia. And he said, Giardia is another parasite. And then he says, you're loaded, my friend. And then he says, you also have something called Ascaris. And I said, well, what is that? And he goes, well, he said, you probably know of it as roundworm. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I just, all of a sudden I'm thinking, oh, I have all this stuff. And he said, I really had a lot of it. And I thought, oh, more stuff to do here, but I was going to listen. And he said to me, he says, I'll tell you something. I've never seen a case of cancer or AIDS that didn't have some kind of parasitic involvement.
Very interesting.
And he says, I think that it's a good thing that you came here, today. And I started to think instantly about all my friends that had cancer that I had met at the Cushy Institute, and thought about all the people that had suffered from the same kind of things that I had gone through. And I thought to myself, well, maybe they have parasites too. And I got to figure out, I got to get rid of this stuff, and then maybe somehow or another I can help them. And that's the kind of thing that went through my mind. And so he gave me some herbs to take and told me to go on back and come back and see him in about 3 months. And so I went back to the Berkshires, and at that time, I had moved up there, and we were living up there, and went there and was taking these parasite herbs and doing all this cleansing. And I'm telling you, it was like unbelievable, the stuff I started to see. I mean, it was like I was detoxing like crazy. And when you start to see stuff, you start to believe. And when you believe, it makes a big difference in sticking with something. And uh, but I didn't feel good taking these herbs. I felt like somebody had a ball peen hammer and was hitting me about every 2 seconds. I had a terrible headache with taking these herbs. And I told Ann Louise, and Ann Louise told me that, I might want to consider taking something that she had formulated for a company, a year or two back, and that it seemed to work pretty well for people and didn't have these side effects. So I took her up on it, and I started to take those herbs, and that seemed to do the trick, and it was a lot better. And after another 3 months, I went back to see him, and everything was clear. And he said, everything's clear. So I know that I did the right thing, and I felt a lot better, and actually started to gain weight again. So I knew that whatever I was doing was making a huge, huge difference. And they, after that, I got very interested in the parasite thing, and I got thinking about, what I was going to do next with my life. And I met Ann Louise, and we got to spend time. And I was actually cooking for my friend. He had rented a house in the Berkshires, and he was there, and he was seeing Ann Louise. It was Herb, the same fellow. He was seeing Ann Louise, and he said to me that she was thinking of moving in the house, and that she was going to be living across the hall from me because she had was leaving the apartment that she was living in and needed a place to live, and they were doing some kind of a trade. So she would be living in this house that we lived. It was a big house. It was like I don't know how many bedrooms it had. It was a big house that he had rented, and we all shared this house, and I did all the cooking. So Ann Louise was there, and I'm got to know her and got to spend time with her, and I was doing so much better, after the parasite thing, and I found her so interesting that little by little we became very close, and eventually became a couple. And it's funny how that happened, and living across the hall from each other, and sharing meals together, and spending time, talking about interesting things. But after we got together, I came up with this idea of starting my own company. I knew I needed to do something. I'd been in the convenience store business, and I wanted to do something else, myself. And I started thinking about it, and I woke up during the night with an idea about starting a company, and the company would be called Unikey Health. And Unikey would be a company that stood for Universal Key to Health, and that would get to the root of health problems, like such as parasites, such as other toxic substances that needed to come out, and then we would detoxify, and then we would rebuild and maintain health after that. So I got very excited about that, and my first thing would be that I would get into the parasite cleansing herbal side of things. And so I decided, though, that I would do that in New Mexico because I loved New Mexico. And as a younger person, I had spent time in New Mexico around Taos and Santa Fe, and I love that area. So I decided that maybe I should move back out there. And then I asked Ann Louise if she would go with me, and she decided she would. And we went to New Mexico, and there was a teacher of Ann Louise's there, and her name was Dr. Hazel Parcell. And Hazel Parcell was a very well known doctor in certain circles, especially in the alternative health field at that time. And she was over 100 years old. And it was Ann Louise's original teacher that got her interested in nutrition in the first place.
So cool.
And she was telling me that I would love her and I needed to meet her. And I guess I thought she'd be in a wheelchair and be, or barely getting around. But boy, was I wrong, because when I got there and I met Dr. Parcells, that was the first thing we did was we went to see her, and she came in to greet us, and she was unbelievable. I mean, she's walking around. She was over 100. She was maybe 102 or 3, maybe 103 then. And I couldn't believe it. She was so vital and had so much energy.
When you looked at her, wow, when you first saw her, what if you didn't know her age? What age would you thought she was?
She probably looked like she was maybe 80, someone like that, maybe 80-year-old lady. And she was just, so jolly and so full of energy and so bright and so smart. And she had her own story. She had been written off at the age of 40 or 42. I think it was 40 when she got sick, but somewhere around there. She had tuberculosis, and she had owned a beauty shop, and she had gotten sick, I guess, from all the toxic chemicals, and eventually had tuberculosis. Her whole system was run down, and they told her that she only had a couple, 2 or 3 weeks to live, and they told her that she should just go to a sanitarium there, and she didn't do it. She got up and she started eating vegetables. That's what her body felt like eating. She ate all the vegetables she could, especially spinach, because she couldn't get a lot of other things back then. So she ate all this spinach, and within a month, this kidney that had been 3/4 gone, one of her kidneys was 3/4 gone, had almost completely regenerated within a year. But within a month, she was just like had all this energy, and everything was starting to be better. And when she went back a year later, that doctor couldn't hardly tell anything had ever been wrong with her. And it was amazing. So she got interested in health and started to study and became a naturopathic doctor, chiropractor, and a PhD in nutrition, and was a nutritionist at a university for many years until she was in her 70s. And this was her second career. So she almost died. So then I met her and Ann Louise, and then at that time I was getting ready to start my company, Unikey Health, and I wanted to learn everything I could from her, and every thing that she could teach me, I was going to try to learn. So I got to spend a little time with her, and I in her lab with her, working with her, some, and learning how to develop products and learning the way that you formulate. And she was a miracle. I mean, she was unbelievable. And of all the people I've ever worked with, Michio Kushi was a real master, but she was something else too. And it just was like totally like anybody. I've never even met anyone like that. And she had all the answers pretty much that to health. And so anyway, I got to know her, and one day we were having lunch, and she said, "Come on in here, honey, and let's have some lunch." Well, she always cooked in a crock pot, and she would have all these vegetables and things in the crock pot. And that day she had beans and ham hocks. Well, I'd been on this strict macrobiotic diet. I wasn't going to get off the macrobiotic diet. There's no way back then. There's no way I was going to stop that. Well, she told me, she says, "Look, I'll tell you something right now." She says, you got to start eating meat again, honey." She says, "If you don't, you're going to get sick." She says, "I can tell you, I've worked with many people over the years." She says, "You don't look healthy. Your color's not good. And you got to start eating more protein to feed your glands. Your glands are getting weak. And, I'm telling you, you need to consider this." Well, I looked at her, and she's so vibrant and so so much the picture of health, that I said, well, who's going to argue with this 100, and at that point it's probably 105, probably 104, I guess, year old woman. Who's going to argue with her? And so I took some of it, and I tell you, that's when I started eating meat again. I wouldn't eat meat for quite a few years there. I wouldn't eat meat, and so she got my attention. Without her, who knows what would have happened. But she was into the parasites big time. She was into detoxifying the body, taking the load off, rebuilding the glands, helped a tremendous amount of people. And she taught me so much just from her. And Louise taught me a lot. And then I started the company Unikey and started developing my own products. And I've been in this business, the Unikey's business, for 28 years. And it's thrived over the years, and it's been a wonderful business. And the main thing that we started out was the parasite cleansing, and we've done so much over the years. But I guess the whole thing is that uh, I've done very well over the years, and I still keep myself on the path of health. And I'm proud to say that I keep learning all the time. There's always new things. And not only was it the macrobiotic diet, it was the vitamin C, the parasite cleansing. I also learned about another thing that I did, through another one of my friends and teachers that I looked up to. It was called Iscador, which was a mistletoe,
Mm-hmm.
which stimulated my immune system. And I did that for a year, where you inject yourself with mistletoe from Europe,
Mm-hmm.
and I did that. So I've always been open to what's next until I kind of figure out all the pieces of the puzzle. And today I do a lot more things. It's over the years I've done so much more than that. But um, just eating this macrobiotic diet, which was so detoxifying and so healthy. It had all these vegetables. I mean, your cruciferous vegetables and your cancer killing vegetables, with the phytonutrients. And I stopped eating sugar, which feeds cancer. And that's the big thing. You got to get off sugar and starve the sugar out of your system, and the vitamin C will do the rest. And I mean, it does a lot, the vitamin C. And um, so I've done a whole lot more now than I've ever done, and things I've done now. But we can get into that if we have time.
Absolutely. As long as you have time, I'd love to get into that. I'm just so inspired by your journey. Thank you for laying it all out and sharing what it took to get here. I just, they should make a movie out of your life. I just love how there's divine intervention. I know some people don't believe um, in the wisdom of the universe or in a creator. But when you sit back and you examine your life, you see that there's these miracles that occur, that it's not chaos and random. But even if it's just our own intentions, even if we can just believe that when you set out to pray that day, in the hospital right after your surgery, you set out an intention to seek information. You were asking for the universe or asking for people to come help, but you're also opening yourself up, and that hope, that perspective was allowing, when information came to you, you were receptive enough to receive it. That's they're part of the brain called the reticular activating system. So we can look at, neuroscience and get that on a scientific level for those who don't believe in God or a creator or divine intervention, by setting an intention and something like prayer, and after, an intention, you are telling your brain, to be a heat-seeking missile for what you're looking for. So I believe that there's this wonderful part of our unconscious mind that we can tap into and help, ask our unconscious mind to help us to seek information by using things like prayer to align our conscious and unconscious mind to be open enough to receive the information. But then you look and you see that there's so much divine intervention that occurred in your life. It wasn't like a pinball machine where it's just random, bouncing here and there. People were put directly in your path, literally in your hospital room, to bring you the information that you needed, but you were also ready to receive it. And those who are listening today are hearing this information not by accident. They're hearing it because they're ready to receive the information. They're ready to learn, and they're receptive because they've chosen to open their mind. I love the saying, open your mind so much your head will fall, your brain will fall out. Just open your mind to the possibilities, especially that the body has this innate ability and innate wisdom to heal itself. And we need to stop putting obstacles in our body's own way towards health. And sometimes healing is getting out of our own way. Stop putting toxins in, help get the parasites out, give the body the nutrition it needs, the diet it actually needs. And that means sometimes adjusting the diet as you go along, depending on where you are at different stages in your health. And then just let the body do its work. So you are this shining example of the fact that we can heal, and that there are resources out there, that there's so much wisdom in holistic medicine and looking to the wisdom of the body's ability to heal versus wait till you get sick and then get a new drug. I just love your story. Thank you so much for laying it all out. And of course, we're all curious now to hear about your new book that's coming out. Learn a bit more about the macrobiotic diet. Of course, learn about your protocols for detoxing parasites. We'd love to hear it all.
Yeah, it's there's a lot to it, and the thing that I think that helps anybody, and myself included, the most is to really believe in what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're doing something, you start to see results, and you will see positive results. Is once you start to get all the toxins out, and you start to get the immune system back in order where it should be, and you start to take nutrients and things that you're deficient in, and you start to exercise on a regular basis. And I'm not talking about going out there and running marathons. And I ran, and I mean, my story we could talk for 3 or 4 hours about this story, but and you can't say every little thing or tell every little detail. But the exercise, just walking every day and doing deep breathing as you walk, sometimes just get plenty of oxygen and keep the lymphatic system moving, and get your system, where it detoxifies on a regular basis the way it's supposed to, and eliminating the way it's supposed to. And because we all have 75 million cancer cells, they say. A lot of times people will say that that we all are walking around the average with 75 million cancer cells in our body. And people think, well, I can't really, but it's true. We all have cancer cells. We all have cancer, but it hasn't, you know, you know, gathered into a tumor, I guess you could say. After about 1 billion cells or more, it becomes up to 1,000 milligram tumor for every billion cells. And the thing is that if you don't take care of yourself as you get older, and some of us younger, like I was exposed to a lot of things. When I look back at the things I was exposed to, I lived several places next to one of these high-powered lines, these big double huge strand major power lines, where they were sometimes one place was right out my back door. The other place I lived for almost 10 years around one that, well, it wasn't 10 years, it was probably maybe 7 or 8 years around one that was no further than 50 yards away. And you're getting this energy all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was in the gasoline business, and when I was in
Right.
college, I pumped gasoline. So you're around all these petrochemicals, you're breathing all this stuff. And then before that, when I worked construction. This was before I got sick. At one point for 7 years on and off, and I was exposed to PVC glues every day.
Oh my gosh.
And you're breathing all this stuff in, and when you're young, you think you're invincible. And so I'm breathing this stuff, and I'm not taking care of myself, and I'm probably drinking too much and eating fast food or whatever we had back then, not taking care of me, thinking the last thing I was going to do is really focus on my diet. And here I'm exercising, myself, and running up to 60 miles a week. Well, when I was running all this time, I mean, I wasn't supporting myself properly. So no wonder I ended up with cancer. No wonder. It's not just that I got too much sun out there. It's because maybe I had a weakness from the sun, too much sun here or that, or chemicals. But like the melanoma, a lot of people say it's from chemical exposure and toxicity and a lack of immunity. And when I started to feel sick all the time and started to feel like I'm getting the colds and flus and allergies like I'd never had in my life. Why is that? I had polyps in my sinuses. I had everything. Well, my whole system was breaking down as a young man, and no one ever thinks anything about it. But it's not normal. You should never get sick. But people very often, you shouldn't get sick, but occasionally. I mean, everybody's gonna get sick sometime. But I can honestly say, after I discovered all this stuff and after I started changing my ways, I probably hadn't been sick, really sick with anything, in maybe 3, 4 times in 30 years. And that was like maybe a head cold and maybe flu one time. Well, that's unusually usual because most people get the flu a time or two every year, and it's because they're just not taking care of themselves. They're not thinking
Mm.
about it,
Mm-hmm.
and they're probably not until something bad happens to them, and they start either that or they start to feel really lousy. But with all this cancer in everybody, it you would think it would get their attention, but most people don't even know this, and it's just out of control. No wonder there's so much of this stuff. And one thing I found out through all this, through the vitamin C, which I took 20,000 milligrams of vitamin C from the beginning all the way through, and to this day I probably take 16,000 a day still. And never had any side effects, never had any problems. Maybe if I take too much, you'll get a little bit of loose bowels, because that's what happens with vitamin C. But I never did IV vitamin C, which you can get nowadays, which is a lot more powerful. But I did all this vitamin C, and I to this day, I still do a lot of vitamin C, and you probably have a hard time getting me not to take it. because it's helped me. But cancer, Linus Pauling, did a lot of research, and he did some studies, um, later on in his life when he not long before he died. He did a cancer study, and it was on vitamin C and cancer again, but he added another matrix to it. He added lipase, which is amino acid, proline, which is an amino acid, and he added a green tea extract. And he used that in this combination, and he treated people of all these different kinds of cancers. And at the time, I didn't know why the vitamin C worked so well, other than, I was afraid to stop it, because in his first book that I read, he says people did well on it as long as they, were on it. So there was no way you're going to get me to stop. But this study showed that cancer is a collagen disease, and it spreads through the collagen, which is the connective tissue.
Right.
And it metastasizes, and when it spreads through the collagen, it starts causing damage, inflammation, and in different other areas of the body and organs and tissues. So the thing about the vitamin C is it helps to stop it from spreading. And that's why when someone's first diagnosed with cancer, they got to really get on something fast. You can't mess around with it. Cancer is not something you can just fool around with and think, well, I'll see if this works. This doesn't work, I'll do something in 2 or 3 months or something, because it can double in 90 days. The average, I believe they say, cancer cells can double in 90 days. If you have a tumor going on, it could double in the size in 3 months. And I mean, and some fast aggressive types can grow faster. So all that causes is inflammation, and then you start to have a big problem when it gets in an area. So vitamin C is remarkable. And the other thing about vitamin C is that vitamin C, along with iron and copper, create in the cell, create hydrogen peroxide. Hydrogen peroxide is an oxidant that destroys cancer cells. And we naturally have catalase in our body. Catalase is an antioxidant normally found in the body, which in cancer cells have it too, but it's like very little compared to the human. So they can't handle a lot of hydrogen peroxide. We can handle it, and our body deals with it through the catalase antioxidant process. So that's a big deal with that. And also when cancer, you know, gets in contact with vitamin C, I think it's probably from the hydrogen peroxide, but in general, it commits suicide, which is called apoptosis, which is it commits suicide. So there's no way in the world that anybody that has cancer shouldn't be taking high amounts of vitamin C. I can tell you that, because if you do that, your chances of survival went way up in my book.
I have questions about the vitamin C. There's so much controversy around the quality of vitamin C, whether it's synthetic or naturally derived, whether it's, made from GMO corn or whatever, made from rose hips. So I'd love to know what your thoughts are on, because what I understand from Linus Pauling Institute is what I've read on their website is vitamin C is vitamin C. It doesn't matter where it's sourced, for one. And yeah, it's a little bit of a sticky wicket. And then two, how do you take that much? Do you work your way up to being tolerant, or do you need to take really high quality vitamin C in order to absorb that much?
Well, here's what you do is you take the vitamin C, and I'm not sure that the vitamin C matters or not. I've heard that too. I would think that you don't want to take GMO, because why add more glyphosates, which is in the GMO foods, the corn. A lot of vitamin C is made from corn. And, if you take, why add more toxicity, more cancer causing things to your body? You want to take away as much as you can of the toxicity, the cancer causing toxicity in your body. and you also want to take on as much food as you can that are cancer fighting foods, like the cruciferous vegetables, anything that is I mean, you can look and list up, and that is anti-cancer. And you want to stay away from a lot of fruit. A lot of people eat way too much fruit. Well, vitamin C is in fruit, but you have to eat an awful lot of fruit to get the kind of vitamin C. So you want to stay away from that to get the vitamin C, because I know a lot of people that just live on fruit, and they wonder what happened to these people. Well, they fed the cancer all this glucose, this sugar that they produced. But the vitamin C, you want to make sure that it is buffered. If you can find one that's buffered, meaning that it's easy on the stomach.
Mm-hmm.
I like it if it's buffered with magnesium, maybe lysine and magnesium. There's certain powdered vitamin C's out there that are well absorbed. There's one I know of that is 80% absorbed. It's almost like an IV form. It's so efficient, with absorption, and that one is very gentle also. And I could give you that. I don't sell it or anything. It's one that it's American Nutritionals
Mm-hmm.
is a company that has a really good Vitality is Vitality C, I believe, is the name of it. That is an excellent one to get started on. Uh, they have an excellent product, I feel. Then there's the Dr. Rath. Dr. Rath is
Mm-hmm.
the doctor that worked with Linus Pauling. He's a doctor that they've pretty much about run out of the country because he's helping people, is what I feel.
I love Dr. Rath's work. I got into his work in 2005, and back when the internet was feels still so young compared to what it
Hmm.
is now.
Oh
And
yeah.
you could download all of his books for free. He gave away all of his books for free on his website, and I think he still might do that. But I read his book, all of his books that were available at the time. One of them being Why Animals Don't Get Heart Attacks and People Do, and that completely blew my mind open to the ideas about nutrition, and it really set me it was one of the mind opening experiences that kept me going on this path of seeking holistic health.
Yeah.
What vitamin C do you take?
Well, the vitamin C that I take is the Dr. Rath formula,
Mm-hmm.
and he's got two different ones. And if you call up Dr. Rath or drrath.com, they'll tell you they've got people you can talk to there. They might even have a medical doctor you can talk to, but and get advice on the type of vitamin C and how much they recommend. But I use the vitamin C, the Rath vitamin C, and I also use the Vitality C, the one I'm talking about, to mix it up. Um, if I had cancer again and I had to deal with this, I would probably find someone that could do an IV drip and probably get 50,000 to 100, not 50,000, 50 uh, uh, thousand milligrams and 100,000 or 100,000 up to 100,000 milligrams of vitamin C. You can get that much in a week sometimes. So it depends. You might start off with 25 and work up to 50 and then to 100. But if you go to someone that does this and is very knowledgeable, which they should be, and get the drip form, it'll saturate your body faster. And that's the key thing is you want to take the vitamin C as quick as possible so that the cancer has less ability to spread. And you want that, and you want to get on a lot of other things also. But that's what I take. I take the Wrath and I take the Vitality C. I'm sure there's a lot of great products out there, but these are the ones that I found. I think it's L-ascorbate is the one that is a lot of people recommend for absorption. It's a little higher priced,
Mm-hmm.
but they say that absorbs better. But again, I don't know. For years, I probably took things with glyphosates and everything else. I don't know, because that you get what you get and you take what you take. but I've always taken something that was buffered, with some kind of vitamin with magnesium or lysine. And I've enjoyed that one a lot, and the one I've taken, and now I'm using the Dr. Rath and the Vitality C, and it's it. I don't have problems. You definitely don't have any problems going to the bathroom. I'll tell you. And the other thing, I've gone to, get my arteries checked out several times. And this is a quick story. It has nothing to do with cancer, but it has to do with my heart, which, I come from genetically, background of heart disease. And a few years ago, I went and got checked out, and I had a calcium score scan done, and I was in New York. And I go to this place, and it was, they saw they did back then, and there's probably more of it now out there, but it was a scan where they could see in your arteries to see the calcium buildup in your arteries.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I decided that I needed to have my heart checked out, and I went and had this test done. It was almost like um, um, like you're doing a CAT scan almost, and they run you through this tube and back through, and then the guy, says, go have a seat, and we'll give you your results here in a few minutes. And the guy comes over and says, "Can I talk to you?" And I said, "Well, sure, you can talk to me." And he said, I'm a little, I'm scratching my head here. I thought he was going to tell me. He says, "Oh man," he says, "you're clogged up, and you better get straight to the hospital or something." So the guy says to me, he says, "I haven't seen this kind of thing very much at all. I don't know if I've ever seen it like this." And I said, "Well, what are you talking about?" I didn't know. It scared me. He says, "Well," he says, "your arteries," I was 50, I think it was 52 or 4 then, I can't remember. But he says, "Your arteries look like a baby's arteries." I said, well, is that good or bad? And he goes, "Well, that's good." He said, they're clean. He said, "I don't see anybody your age. Usually people have some plaque buildup, but you don't have any." And he said, "That's unusual. What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, it must be from all the vitamin C and all the antioxidants that I take." And he says, "Well, I don't know, but you better keep doing it." Because he said, "Man," he says, "it's like," he says, "this is like a little kid's arteries, you know." So I know that it works. And then year before last, I went and did the same thing, the same thing. So I know it has to be that vitamin C, because I mean, I take a lot of vitamin C for many, many, many years, along with a lot of supplements. I mean, I take so many, people look at me and think I'm nuts. But I mean, you probably haven't seen anybody take as many things as I do. And people will say, "Well, that can't be good. Well, your liver's got to detoxify all that." Well, but I can tell you one thing, and it might not be, and it probably is overkill, but I have more energy, as much energy as most people, and they're 30 years old, probably. I'll just say that. And I don't, like I said, I don't get sick very much or anything. Can't remember when I got sick last time. And I feel good, and I only mainly do it because I'm in the business and I want to see how well things work. And I've just become the guinea pig, I guess, my own guinea pig over the years. But the vitamin C, is I think it's starting to get its due, but I think it's just so important for people to take, no matter whether they have cancer or not, take vitamin C. And I think I would probably take, at least 5 or 6 grams a day of vitamin C, at least.
Mm-hmm.
Just it wouldn't hurt anybody to spread it out through the day,
Right.
so for absorption, and I take more than that, but I just think that people will get the benefits, and I think they're going to see that it's going to make a big difference, along with a lot of other things, which we can talk about if you want to.
Absolutely. I thought it was really interesting. I mean, these are numbers I heard back in 2005 when I was really diving into Linus Pauling's work and Matthias Rath's work. something like because most animals produce their own vitamin C. Humans can't produce
Hmm.
vitamin C, and a goat will regularly have something like 16 grams of vitamin C coursing through their veins, where a wolf will have something like 32 grams. So if you think about it, you're probably what, two and a half wolves? I mean, how many
Yeah.
how many goats do you think you are, right? So that amount of vitamin C should be, if that's what a goat produces to stay healthy, and a wolf, and you don't hear like of, I don't know, these flu epidemics in animals, like,
Mm.
you don't hear like, "Oh, take your cat to get the flu shot," or something like that. But these animals produce their own vitamin C, and they have grams all the time. Their body is circulating grams of vitamin C. So we're not getting enough vitamins from our food. First of all,
No.
we're not eating enough fresh fruits and vegetables to sustain ourselves optimally. That's why over 70% of the adult population is on at least one prescription medication, because they're experiencing symptoms of nutrient deficiency and toxicity. So they go and get a drug to manage symptoms instead of looking to the root cause, which is we're not giving the cells enough nutrition.
Mm-mm.
And the farming practices in the last 100 years have robbed the soil of so much nutrients that the plants aren't able to even make enough vitamins, and definitely aren't absorbing enough minerals for us. So I absolutely believe in responsible supplementation. Sometimes when I take my supplements, I feel like I'm having a snack, because it's like I have a huge thing of water, and I've got a big handful of all my supplements, and by the time I'm done taking them, I'm full. So I know exactly what you mean.
I know it takes me about 4 big glasses of water just to get
Right?
all my supplements down.
Right. Now, when you say like mega dosing vitamin C, for example, we got to do it responsibly. We have to look at the cofactors that the body needs. What I've learned is that if someone were to only high dose vitamin C, it would throw copper out of balance in the body. And I like that you had mentioned that copper was a cofactor that was needed. How do you address that? How you megadose certain nutrients? How do you make sure that the cofactors are always in balance?
Well, one of the things is, I mean, I take a lot of things, and everyone should take a multiple, no matter what, a really good multiple, not just some little cheap multiple. And they should take a multiple vitamin, no matter what. And uh, that's just a key thing, and so that they don't get deficient, and they need to do a uh, you know, hair analysis or a blood test, regularly. Hair analysis will tell you if there's a low mineral, you know, ratio going on in your body to other minerals. And I mean, I take so much vitamin C, but I've dropped it down a little bit, but I haven't had any deficiencies in anything like that, because we probably do a blood test at least twice a year. And there's a lot of, just a basic blood test will tell you that. And if you're going to get a blood test, if you have to see a doctor, you can get a blood test, um, through request a test, I believe it's called. And you don't have to go see a doctor to get that, but you need to understand how to read it. So you need to, you can find out how to do that online. But that's just if you don't have a doctor that will let you do, preventative blood testing on a regular basis. But you can go to Quest Labs. It's called, I believe it's Request a Test. But Anne Louise, she talks about it all the time, and I'm not sure exactly the the email for it, but if anybody has a question, they could email Anne Louise, at her on her website, and look up on AnneLouise.com and ask that question, or go on the Facebook, and she could answer that, because I know that that's her specialty, one of her specialties.
Sure. We'll make sure we have the links to everything you do And we'll make sure that the links to Anne Louise's website and social media, also, like you said, the Facebook, just so people can contact you and check out your book and your all of your websites, and also check out her resources as well, because I know you guys are a wonderful team. So we'll make sure all those links are in the show notes of today's podcast at learntruehealth.com. This is quite fascinating. I feel like you've opened a can of worms, but it's wonderful. It's so wonderful, especially for those who have a cancer diagnosis, or have had a family member have a cancer diagnosis, or they themselves are worried it's going to come back. To give someone hope, the idea that people on a regular basis, by nutrifying the body, are able to prevent cancer, reverse cancer, go into remission, live long and healthy lives without cancer free. That gives so much hope and gives us a direction to look in the direction of what is working. But there's so many things. I have a friend who's battling cancer, and she has spent probably $100,000 towards natural medicine, and her fight's not over. She's winning, but her fight's not over, and it's hard because everyone says do, one person will say do this, the other person says do that, and you just don't know, what should you do, what shouldn't you do, and what direction you should go. And what kind of advice do you have for someone um when there's all this information out there, and we could spend a fortune on going in these different directions, but how do we know what the right direction is for us?
Thing about it is, if you have a diagnosis of cancer, there's two ways you can go. One is conventional, and most people will find out through conventional methods that they have cancer, and just like I did. And sometimes people select to go the conventional route. It's up to them, and it's something they have to pray about or meditate on, or just whatever they feel inside that they need to do. Some people feel comfortable with going the medical route, but I think that, I mean, it's for me to sit here and say don't do that or do this or that. I mean, I can't say that what they did for me, the surgery and the chemo that I did do, which was that it didn't help. I don't know that, but what I do know is they didn't give me much hope, or give me much to look forward to, and my body wasn't really responding, and I was getting sicker and sicker. And I've decided that instead of being there doing their thing, I was going to get up and do something. And so I did. But what I would do is if I was someone, I would, first thing I would do is I would read as much as they could, and I would get my book. I used to have cancer, because I'm going to tell you what I did and what I would do if I had to do it over again. There's a lot of things you need to know, and it's really easy to read, but it'll give you the information, and it'll also give you some other books to read and other things that would be very helpful. But it's if you look at the newer research, there's a lot of things out there that help slow down or kill cancer, and it's a lot of it's natural, herbal. There's a lot of things they could do, and I feel that their chances are very, very, very high of getting well when you take control yourself, and when you really, get down and knock heads with it, and use a natural method. But again, it's just up to the person. I've had really good friends lately pass away of cancer. That I just made me sick, but it was their choice. They went the conventional route, and they didn't do very well. But I wanted them to do other things, but it's just everybody has their different way of looking at things, and I understand it. But that's why I started my foundation, because I got sick and tired of seeing people die left and right, and I wanted to give back. And I felt like all these years I've learned a lot, and I've made a good living, and now it's time to give back. And with this nonprofit thing, and not not do it for any other reason other than to give people hope. And my intention is as we've already started this, is to interview as many people that I can, you know, on video that have survived serious advanced stage 4 cancer, and that's through my foundation, Templeton Wellness Foundation, and they're going to see people just like them that have survived for 10 years or more, that have had cancer that were basically uh, these people were given up on. And I want people to know that cancer is not a death sentence. Cancer doesn't have to be in it, and it shouldn't even, you shouldn't even think like that anymore. There's so many things you can do. The vitamin C, enzyme therapy. Enzymes are huge. That's the next thing that I wanted to get into. But enzymes is a big deal, and your immunity and your gut flora, which is 70 to 80% of your immune system. You've got to detoxify, you've got to build your system up with cancer fighting nutrients, and you got to get the immune system up at the same time. And when you do that, you're going to start to believe, and the emotional side is going to kick in. You're going to start to believe, you're going to feel better, you're going to start to trust in the survival word and believe in it. And because if you start to feel negative, that's going to take your immune system down. And you want to surround yourself with like-minded people. You want to be around people that don't be around negative thinking people that are going to keep you negative, because that's going to take you down more. And cancer to me is just about all about the body being out of balance. And the more advanced it is, the more out of balance it is, and the longer it's been out of balance. And if you want to get well, then you've got to make changes, and you got to be willing to roll your sleeves up and get to work and go to battle, go to war, whatever you want to think. And to me, I feel that anybody can survive. I understand sometimes people wait too long, or they've been through the mill, they've been through all the treatments, and their immune system has nothing left in it. But and it's tough sometimes. It doesn't work for everyone, but you've got to do it. And once you believe and start to see, and you have to have the attitude like I have had, if it doesn't work for me, it's not going to work for anyone else. Now, if I'm going to do something, I'm going all out 150%. And it's not an easy ride. It's not easy. But like this psychotherapist told me in the hospital, and I always can go back to that and think about it. He says, there's a right way to do it and a wrong way. If you do it the right way, I believe you could get well. And if you don't, then it's not going to be as easy. But he said, you have to do it, and do it the right way. And there's so much out there now that you can do. And I believe that with every cell in my body, that everyone listening to this, everyone's friends that's listening to this, everyone's family, everyone out there can benefit and get well. Because if I can do it, they can do it and stay well. Because when you're giving not much hope, 10 years, 5 years seems like a long time. And there's 5 year survival rate. And as you said earlier, if 6 years it still counts, and that's usually lower stages of cancer. And I can tell you, but that's okay, and you also have to think about the quality of life you're going to have. Maybe you'll survive 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. It depends on your age. But I just feel very strongly that with with the right supplements, the right nutrition, get off of sugar. You got to stay off of sugar. Sugar is your enemy. Sugar is terrible. You got to stay off of anything that's processed. You got to eat less meat if you have cancer in most cases. Some cancers you can eat a little more protein, but at the beginning you have to be pretty strict, and you can widen out a little bit. I mean, I eat meat some. I don't have a big, I don't eat meat every night, and I don't eat, but and you got to be careful with fish nowadays because of all the toxicity. and all the heavy metals and all the PCBs and all the parasites on it. You definitely don't want to eat sushi because people eat that, and that's the end thing, to sit there and eat sushi. Meanwhile, they're getting parasites. Parasites are one of the most immunosuppressive things, according to Dr. Bueno and many others, and Dr. Parcells, known to man. So, you have animals that they get parasites. First thing the vet looks for is parasites. If you have parasites, that's the thing that they're concerned about more. And our doctors don't even look at it. They don't even think about it. And that's a problem right there. But you want to have vitamin C, enzymes. You got to stimulate and keep your immune system strong by supplementing for something that helps support the thymus and the spleen. And in some cases, red bone marrow is very good. But you want to make sure it's GMO free and it's organic and it's grown without hormones. And you don't want to keep adding more toxins. You got to get smart and read labels and ask questions. And you've got to, really, really study this, and you'll see that the knowledge and the truth will set you free from all this fear, and you too will survive, and you too will be able to say, I too beat cancer, and down the road, and you'll be able to say that I used to have cancer, like the title of my book. And that's, I think is the key to all this.
Tell us a little bit about the UniKey health systems. So you've mentioned like you've created some supplements. It's been around for over 20 years.
Well, the UniKey stands for Universal Key to Health, is what I talked about it earlier. And that's getting to the root of health problems. That's getting down to the nitty gritty, like detoxifying the parasites, detoxifying yeast and fungus out of your system, which is a big problem that affects that's really caused from fungus and from mold and from sugar, too much sugar in the diet, too many carbohydrates in the diet. And I'm not a believer in getting totally off of carbohydrates. I believe that whole grains are important. As long as you don't, I probably wouldn't have as many as I did on the macrobiotic diet. But you need that fiber. Fiber is a prebiotic. Fiber will help that, promotes your immune system. But UniKey stands for getting to the root. And that's the key to health. That's the universal key to health. Getting down, getting to the root, and cleaning up from the ground up. Because if you don't go clean house, if you don't go clean the system out, you won't absorb anyway. What's the point of eating all these vitamins and eating all this food if you're full of toxins? But you got to eat the right foods, the foods that help detoxify, the foods that are high in nutrients and minerals, that will help chelate these heavy metals out of your body and the chemicals and pesticides. And that's what UniKey is all about. It's about having products and testing modalities that we have to help people determine the underlying causes of toxicity so that they can detoxify and rebuild. We don't get into so much of UniKey is more of a supplement business and health supply. We sell water filters because water is probably the most important thing that you can put in your body. People can live a long time on just water, but not. They can't live very long without water, let's say, but they can live quite a while away from food. But we want to make sure that this water that is such a big part of our system and our blood, that's pure water. So many people are drinking water out of plastic bottles nowadays, and they're drinking water in restaurants, and they're drinking water in their own home that's full of heavy metals, that's full of chlorine, full of aluminum, heavy, all this stuff that's causing toxicity and full of parasites.
I love it. I'm so fascinated, and I'm thrilled that you created this company, the Unikey Health Systems. What is the website that people can go to see your supplements and your testing and your water filters?
It's Unikey, Unikey health.com.
Excellent. And then you mentioned you have the Templeton Wellness Foundation. I'm really inspired by that. What website do they go to? Is that templetonwellness.com?
Yes, templetonwellness.com.
And so anyone can access the videos of your interviews with cancer survivors?
Yes, it's
Brilliant.
all free to the public, and that's my goal is to interview as many people. If anybody out there knows someone that has gone through a stage 4 or 3 probably type of cancer and has survived for 10 years or more using a combination of conventional and natural healing modalities, are all natural. I would love to speak with them, and they can contact um, us at the Templeton Wellness Foundation. And if you want to contact Stuart at templetonwellness.com, that would be great. And we would love to interview these people. And so that the more people, the more we can help people. And that's all we're about. And we're not selling anything. We don't have any affiliates. I'm not promoting my other business. This is about helping, selling hope,
Mm,
and giving people a knowledge based on real life stories, on living proof stories, I guess you could say. And that's my goal. And it's pretty simple, but I was inspired by the people that I read about that got well, and many others that we didn't even mention, that I felt like if they could get well, then I could too. And what did they do? And you find it's interesting that the people that I've been interviewing, we've interviewed uh, several people now, and we're trying to really get started here. But the people that I interviewed have similar common threads, and they've used in healing modalities. And I find it very interesting. The things that are working are very similar, and vitamin C is one of them. And there's a number of things that I'm finding, but it's not doesn't shock me at all that people with pancreatic cancer are 10, 11 years down the road and they're still doing well when they were written off,
mm,
that many years ago, and they're still doing fine. Yes, they changed their diet. Yes, they changed their lifestyle a little bit, but my gosh, they're living, and they're thriving, and they have their own businesses, and a lot of them are giving back to help others, and they get to see their grandchildren grow up, and that's what life's all about. It's not like you get a diagnosis and you're a goner. It's there's hope, whether it's cancer, heart disease, whatever. It's just you just got to be willing to make changes and roll up your sleeves and get after it. And it's there for the taking, but it's up to the individual. And some people want to do it, and some don't. And you can't make anybody do anything, and I wouldn't want to. And when
right.
people know, just like me, they know they know. It's like you don't have to have someone try to talk you into it. It's like you just know. It's like when I do something I know I need to do for myself, I know in my deep inside of me, I got to do that. I'm supposed to do that. I got to do that. I
Mm-hmm.
don't need someone to be beating at my door, to try to convince me.
I really like that you said pull up, like roll up your sleeves and get to work, do the hard work. Because when it comes to healing and transformation, it really does start with mindset. People who are morbidly obese, people who have
Yes.
diabetes, people who have Lyme disease, they're the first step is the decision to roll up your sleeves and change, because you can't change a disease state in the same with the same lifestyle, diet, and habits that created that disease state. And so it does
Yes.
take overhauling your whole life. And yeah, that's hard.
Well, it's like the water's rising. Do you want to swim or do you want to drown? You
Right,
know?
exactly. Yeah, it is very hard to stop eating the sugar, but you know what's harder? Living with the disease.
Hmm.
So I like that you said, roll up your sleeves and get to work. And we can all do that. We don't have to have a diagnosis of anything. We can all roll up our sleeves and go, you know what? It's time to cut out the sugar or the coffee or whatever the vice that down in your gut has been moving you in the direction of ill health. So I love that you pointed that out. And I think that your videos are going to be a tremendous help to so many people spreading hope and wellness information. So thank you so much for doing that. I'll make sure the links to everything you do is in the show notes of today's podcast at learntruehealth.com. One last thing, can you please tell us about your book that's coming out? Of course, we're going to have a link to your book. I used to have cancer. Tell us about it.
Well, I'm very excited, and the book is going to tell my story. It's about my memoirs. It talks about my life. A lot of it talks about where I come from. It tells you about what I went through, my feelings on a deep level, and it talks about the three knocks on the door, and it tells you all that kind of puts the pieces of the puzzle all together, and it tells you the things that I did and how I felt and why I felt like I got well. And then it tells you about the things I would do if I had to do it all over again, knowing what I know today. And this would be very helpful for those going through it today. And it will inspire you. I know it. And it's a very good story, and it's an easy read. And I used to have cancer. It's on Square One Books, and you can pre-order it at Amazon.com, of course. And uh, I think it's going to do well. It was selected as one of the uh, best new up and coming books for the spring, and in Publishers Weekly, and which is they say is a big deal. I don't know. And it's all about, I mean, cancer is a big deal. 1 out of 2 people,
Mm,
and everybody knows somebody. And
yeah,
it's not rocket science. It's actually easy. The hard work, again, is rolling up your sleeves and doing the work.
yeah.
But once you do it, you start to feel better and better, whether it's getting off of the sugar or whatever. After a couple of weeks or more, a little bit more, you start to not miss the sugar, because it's amazing how the
Mm-hmm.
body starts to transform and starts to get bring itself back to that balance that we talked about. And that's the real key. Once the body becomes balanced again, and it doesn't take more than 3 or 4 or 5 months to get things really going in the right direction. And once you see that, you're going to start to see the numbers come down into where it needs to be, and you're going to start to believe. And seeing is believing, as we always say. And the sky's the limit. And sometimes cancer diagnosis could be considered one of the best things that ever happened to us, because it makes us sometimes get into the things that we're here to really do. Our true calling sometimes is based on um, something that just gets our attention. And it's a lot of people don't like to hear that, and they think that's terrible. But I feel that way. I feel that that's a blessing sometimes, some of these problems we have in life, because it's obstacles are the key factors that create change.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing this information, especially the hope that you give people to take back control of their life and the knowledge that they can do that even when they have a late stage diagnosis of cancer. I love your work. I am such a big fan of you now, just like I'm a fan of your partner, Anne Louise. Listeners can go to episode 284 to hear her interview. And please, listeners, share this information, share these 2 episodes to spread this information and help as many people as possible to know that they can heal their body and that cancer is not a death sentence. James, it's been such a pleasure having you on the show today. Is there anything that you'd like to say to the listener to wrap up today's interview?
Well, Ashley, it's been wonderful to be with you this time and to let me share my story and to help as many people as I can out there. And I just wish everyone that's going through a cancer battle or knows someone or is close to someone in any way understands that getting well is available and cancer is not a death sentence. And the last thing I like to always think is, whether you believe in God or believe in the higher power or believe in just something good happening, on a larger level. But I like to always say that God helps those who help themselves. And when you just have to ask, and when you get that message, and it's not easy, but it'll come to you when you need it at the worst time.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, James Templeton,
Thank
for coming
you.
on the show. It's been such a pleasure. You're welcome back
Thank you
anytime.
so much.
Are you looking to optimize your health? Are you looking to get the best supplements at the lowest price? For high quality supplements and to talk to someone about what supplements are best for you, go to takeyoursupplements.com and one of our fantastic True Health coaches will help you pick out the right supplements for you that are the highest quality and the best price. That's takeyoursupplements.com. takeyoursupplements.com. That's takeyoursupplements.com. Be sure to ask about free shipping and our awesome referral program.